who lies behind the enigmatic veil of the Gloamite Queen, and what secrets bind her to Marika and the very birth of the Golden Order. Elden Ring's lore is more expansive and intricate than anything From Software has ever created before. Even after a year, untangling its mystery and addressing its most fascinating questions remains a challenging task. In this enthralling tale of the lands between and its deity, Marika, there is another significant figure, a character shrouded in mystery, yet crucial to completing the grand narrative. In my previous video, where we discussed Melina and the stolen fragment of Destined Death, I briefly touched upon the Gloamite Queen, stating that she is neither Ranni nor Melina. Today, we will embark on an exciting journey to uncover the true identity of the Gloamite Queen and, perhaps more importantly, to explore her mysterious connection to the inception of the Golden Order. The Lands Between is a realm of divinity. This isolated region, cut off from the rest of the world, is nearly unreachable, and has been home to numerous civilizations that in one way or another owe their fate to the Elden Ring. Some have found their ruin, while others discovered their glory. This cosmic artifact blessed its possessors with not only the power to conquer, but also dominion over the rules of the natural world. Through its vessel, the Elden Ring enacted its vision, and through the vessel, a god was born. At the heart of the current age lies the Earth Tree and its eternal queen, Marika, the current vessel of the Elden Ring. But the Golden Order, an age of gold and life, is merely the current system established under the blessing of the Greater Will and its messengers, the Two Fingers. Before Marika and the Earth Tree, there was an age of dragons and beasts, and it was the fall of one particular figure that marked the succession of ages, an end that heralded a new beginning. The defeat of the Gloamite Queen sealed Destined Death and gave birth to the Golden Order. As such, revealing her identity is a crucial piece of the puzzle that makes up the game's lore. Once an Empyrean chosen by the Fingers to become the god of her age, she led the Godskin nobles and apostles who wielded the power of Destined Death through their god-slaying black flames. Destined Death, Gloam Eyes, and an Empyrean. This is all we have to work with. So unsurprisingly, theories about her identity tend to revolve around Ranni, Melina, or Marika. However, those explanations never quite fit to me. A convincing theory should make the overall picture clearer without contradicting well-established facts in the lore. And so, it is only through examining the events surrounding the Gloamite Queen and the boundaries set by the better understood events of the timeline that we can deduce her identity. And so, having said that, I would like to unveil to you a different perspective on the true identity of the Gloamite Queen as the god of the previous age. While some might question the idea of the Gloamite Queen being called a god when she has been referred to as an Empyrean, we cannot logically dismiss the possibility based on that alone. In fact, her past as an Empyrean only leaves the door open to her potentially being a god, as we will see later. After all, Marika herself could be described with the exact same words, as she once was an Empyrean chosen by the Fingers. Given that From Software often creates gaps in the lore intentionally, I see this as a hint towards something that is not explicitly revealed to us. I propose that the Gloamite Queen was the god of the age before the Earth Tree, the age of the dragons, beasts, and Farum Azula. This was the era when Placidusact was the Elden Lord, making him the Queen's consort. She was the vessel of the Elden Ring depicted in Maniket's boss room. The young figure is surrounded by 3 walls, symbolic of her shadows, and a nod to her status as Empyrean. The foundation of this theory revolves around the timeline of the Earth Tree's creation, the mechanics of the Elden Ring, and the context of Marika's ascension to godhood. I am aware that there has been a recent shift in the community's understanding of the timeline, so I will make sure to explain how and why certain events should be placed where they are. First, let's discuss what it means to be a god in Elden Ring. Though the term god is often used broadly in reference to anything from a powerful local being to an outer god, in our context, Enya provides us with a specific definition.
Queen Marika is the vessel of the Elden Ring, carrier of its vision, a god in truth. But after the Elden Ring's shattering, she was imprisoned in the Earth Tree, a grim punishment for shattering the Order. Despite her godhood,
Being the vessel of the Elden Ring equates to being a god, which is precisely what the Gloamite Queen must have been. The item description of the godskin armor set tells us that the defeat of the apostles and their queen led to the sealing of death, their source of power. However, Enya tells us,
The rune of death goes by two names. The other is destined death, the forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
removing the Rune of Death from the Order means removing it from the Elden Ring. Although you might think that the Rune of Death wasn't necessarily part of the Elden Ring, as it is somewhat unique compared to other runes, Miyazaki confirms it in an interview. And therefore, if the Rune of Death was in the Elden Ring, and the Apostle stood between Malekith and Marika's sealing of the rune, it stands to reason that the one in possession of the Rune of Death and subsequently the Elden Ring was the Gloamite Queen. The Queen and her apostles portrayed as servants of destined death might initially seem a bit dark for the deity of an era, but it is not actually out of place. In my previous video discussing Melina and the Gloam eye, I neglected to mention the tattoo on her sealed eye. This mark represents the talons of deathbirds, and the resemblance is strikingly evident on a regrettably cut weapon which was intended for use by the Ravenmount assassins, who imitate the deathbirds. In the time before the Erdtree, deathbirds played the role of gravekeepers. As children of the envoy of an outer god, they burned corpses with ghost flames and maintained graveyards, carefully tending to the ashes. They conducted death rituals and were revered as divine envoy. Central to several faiths in the land, they showed that death was pervasive in the age before the Erdtree. A contrast to the Golden Order, which is also apparent in Farum Azula, the ancient royal capital. The city itself is a colossal necropolis for the beasts and eventually became a mausoleum for the Dragon Lord. When one enters the crumbling city, they are greeted by a storm, a dragon, and a twin bird. This twin bird symbol is crucial, as it represents the envoy of the outer god of the deathbirds, further linking Farum Azula to the concept of death. It is also worth noting that the Gloamite Queen was indeed a queen, and within the game only two significant figures bear the title: Marika, the current god, and Rennala, the queen of the only kingdom rivaling the Golden Order. The title of queen could hint at her divine role, and that same divinity was reflected on the godskin nobles, who are said to exhibit inhuman anatomy not unlike the Crucible, something else that was considered divine in ancient times. Given this context, it is unsurprising that the game's main and only mandatory godskin encounter occurs in Farum Azula, as it is their home. Farum Azula itself was the center of Placidusax's power, and his remembrance informs us that he was the Elden Lord of the age prior to the Erdtree. The phrasing here explicitly suggests that it wasn't any age, but the one that directly preceded the Golden Order. The title of Elden Lord inherently implies that his reign was established upon the Elden Ring and the blessing of the Greater Will. It is said that Placidusax's god has fled, leaving him in a severely damaged state. The god of Placidusax was most likely the figure depicted here, surrounded by wolves who are said to be the shadows of the Empyreans, and under the ancient form of the Elden Ring. Although it might seem surprising that his god was human, Farum Azula actually had a significant human presence, as evidenced by the statues and the use of human reliefs and carvings in their architecture. And so now the question arises, what happened to the siege of the previous order? We know from the ruined greatsword and the ruins on the ground that Farum Azula was struck by a meteor. But is a mere meteor strike enough to cause an empire built on the power of a god and the ancient dragons to crumble? Does that truly explain the state of the Dragon Lord and why his god had to flee? I do not think so.
A crown is warranted with strength.
However, if the god of Farum Azula was indeed the Gloamite Queen, then a conflict must have occurred, resulting in their defeat. Often when discussing the creation of the Golden Order and Marika's ascension to godhood, there seems to be a gap that people don't address. How did Marika obtain the Elden Ring? And what transpired between the Age of the Dragons and the Age of the Erdtree? It's almost as if there is an assumption that a powerful reality-bending artifact like the Elden Ring was just laying around, and that the emissaries of the Greater Will, the Fingers, were idly twiddling their thumbs. However, the game doesn't leave any mystery as to how the gods operate. as taken by force is the rule. Therefore, I believe that the previous order was overthrown by force by Marika. This same event led to the defeat of the Gloamite Queen at the hand of Malekith and Marika's ascension to Godhood, sealing death and creating the Earth Tree. First, I would like to establish that Marika's ascension to Godhood, the creation of the Golden Order, and the birth of the Earth Tree are all parts of the same event, and not separate occurrences in history. In essence, Empyreans are potential vessels of the Elden Ring who under the guidance of the Fingers would forge whatever order they envisioned, as long as said order does not defy the greater will and its vassals' control. When one becomes a god, they would rearrange the Elden Ring to fulfill their desire. Thus, if Marika were to remove the Rune of Death and create the Golden Order, she would have done so at her ascension, the reason also being that the Earth Tree can only exist in a world without death. The Earth Tree catacombs and the Earth Tree burials were systems put in place to lead people to be absorbed by the Earth Tree, and most importantly, for it to feed on their souls. Spirit tuner Roderica says that the ability of spirits to remain in this world and merely exist in the lands between wasn't always the norm. It is something that exists only within the rules defined by the Golden Order, and as such, only in a world where the Rune of Death is sealed.
I feel like I'm really coming to grips with spirit tuning of late. I can see how and why immortal essence exists, a spirit under the Golden Order. I can understand their yearnings, what they become drawn to.
It is under these conditions that the Earth Tree was able to grow. The Golden Order is not something that came to be at some point during Marika's reign. The Earth Tree is the embodiment of the Golden Order itself. Among the earliest references to the Golden Order in the timeline is Rogier's mention of the union between Karya and the Earth Tree symbolized by the marriage of Radagon and Renala. However, the Earth Tree's origins can be traced back to just before the war against the Giants, which also coincides with the time of Marika's ascension. In the Echo of Marika from the aptly named Church of Repose, there are hints of a significant achievement by Godfrey and his warriors even before the war against the Giants.
Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life. Brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Earth Tree.
Marika announces the beginning of her age, the age of the Earth Tree, which indicates her ascension must have been completed, as she asks Godfrey to brandish the Elden Ring. And this monumental achievement could only have been one thing, the sole use Marika ever had for Godfrey. Marika, alongside her army, vanquished the dragons and the Gloamite Queen. To this day, we can still find the Crucible Knights, one of Godfrey's very first warriors, battling the Beastmen of Farum Azula. And Godfrey himself claimed his crown by defeating the previous Elden Lord Placidus Sax, who then retreated beyond time, explaining the state we find him in. It is possible that it is around this time that Godfrey took Serash, a then Lord of Beasts, upon his back. Much later, after the establishment of the Earth Tree, Leyndell was attacked by Grandsax. This desperate act led to the dragon's defeat at the hand of Godwyn the Golden. The war was described as bitter, which puzzled me for a long time until I understood that their lord and god had previously been overthrown by the Golden Order. But, despite the power of Godfrey and Marika, it is difficult to imagine them confronting a god and the ancient dragons before their ascension. This is where some puzzle pieces begin to fit together. At the mountaintop of the Giants, we find a hero's grave, where the champions who fought for the Earth Tree during the Giant War received the honor of Earth Tree burial. This grave has an unusual detail. The banners inside do not represent the Golden Order, but rather the two fingers. Given how early this was during Marika's age, it is perhaps not surprising, but it suggests that her forces had the blessing of the Greater Will and the Finger, while the Gloamite Queen perhaps did not. A similar situation occurred with the Shattering, leading to the demigods being forsaken and the Fingers calling upon the Tarnished to take everything they possess.
Ah, great runes are the stuff of demigods, the children of the goddess Queen Marika, she who is vessel of the Elden Ring. Tainted by the strength of their runes, her children warred, but none could become Elden Lord. And so grace was extended to your kind, the Tarnished. Listen, the fingers speak. The greater will has long renounced the demigods. Tarnished, show no mercy. Have their heads. Take all they have left. The fingers have willed it so.
3 years ago, when Elden Ring was first revealed at E3, we were given an initial glimpse of the Godskins through a concept art of the Godskin Apostle. In an interview, Miyazaki commented on this character, mentioning the ambition of mankind. Throughout this entire video, we haven't discussed the Gloamite Queen's god hunt. This raises the question, which gods were they targeting? Could it be that her excessive ambition led to her abandonment by the Greater Will? It's difficult to say with certainty, but the last civilization known to have challenged the Greater Will was assailed by falling stars and buried underground. And Farum Azula being struck by a meteor is no coincidence to me, but more on that on a future video. It may seem like quite a stretch, but as far as theories on the identity of the Gloamite Queen go, this one makes the most sense to me. The idea of her being Ranni or Melina doesn't fit well with the timeline, as she was active before Marika became a god and thus before they were born. While the theory that Melina is her reincarnation as Marika's daughter do circumvent the issue, it feels like it only serves to explain Melina's Gloam eye without truly considering who she was to begin with. As for Melina's eye, I have already provided my own interpretation, which is just one of many possibilities. There is still a strong chance that the Gloamite Queen is not a character we currently know. But either way, I have a feeling we might learn more about her in future DLC content. After all, neither the Gloamite Queen nor the god of Placidusax have been confirmed to be dead. And in short, here's my proposition. The Gloamite Queen was the god of the age prior to the Earth Tree. She served as the previous vessel to the Elden Ring, with Elden Lord Placidusax as her consort. Her reign was shaped by the influence of an outer god of death. Possibly due to her ambition and the god hunt she wished to conduct, she was abandoned by the Greater Will. Marika was then chosen as an Empyrean to succeed her by the Fingers. Farum Azula was struck by a meteor, and with the support of the Fingers, she seized the Elden Ring for herself and defeated the Gloamite Queen. This marked the birth of the Earth Tree, and the dawn of the Golden Order, with the removal of the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring. And there you have it. This is probably my longest video by far, so I would greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Also be sure to let me know your thoughts and rebuttals below, as I do read them all. The next video will be about Marika's will, a request on the comments of my previous video. With that being said, thank you and see you next time. Bye bye.